I'm Mary Carskadon. I'm a professor in the Department of Psychiatry and Human Behavior at Brown University School of Medicine and director of the Sleep Research and Chronobiology Lab at Bradley Hospital. This was a somewhat ambitious project that we undertook to follow across 2.5 years 2 cohorts of kids, one who were 9 or 10 years old when they started, and the second who were 15 or 16 years old when they started. And the goal was to see them every 6 months and collect information from them. So the first and last visits included keeping a sleep diary for a week while wearing an activity monitor, and then coming into the lab for sleep recordings. And at each stop along the way, we also collected a number of questionnaire forms. And every 6 months, they did a week with the activity monitoring and the sleep diary. We also each time had them come to the lab for an evening to collect saliva in order for us to measure melatonin onset phase. So there's a lot of information there, much of which has not yet been published. There's one major publication written by Stephanie Crowley, a former graduate student and colleague, and that really goes through much of the activity and melatonin onset phase data in both cohorts. Goes deep and wide, you might say, the available data. There are, self-report measures and also parent-report measures. So we have things like the CBCL, Child Behavior Checklist, which gets completed by parent. And I think there are 2 different versions, one for the younger kids, one for the older kids. And I think it's a good opportunity to dig in a little bit to see what's happening in early childhood to early adolescent transition. We also collected information so that we can estimate their pubertal status. So folks who are interested in that initial change and want to look at some of the behavioral measures that may, give some meaningful content on what's going on early on. And then we jump a couple of years later. I think that the younger cohort, the older, after the 2.5 years, would have been right up against the first assessments of the kids who were in the second cohort. So I think in the second cohort, again, it's almost, some of them were transitioning from high school by the end of the study. So I think there's another opportunity to look at, well, wait a minute, what happens in that transition? There were some interesting clues that emerged in Dr. Crowley's analyses of these data that I think would be good to follow up with the behavioral measures as well as just the activity and melatonin phase. One of the reasons for uploading this kind of data into a repository like NSRR is there's way too much for us to analyze and publish ourselves. By the time you collect all the data, then you've already written the next grant proposal that's this system that we live in that's, keeps us moving forward. And where I am, we don't have access to graduate students who really often are the drivers of publishing your research. Happy that it's now available for others to mine and learn more. Data sharing is, for me, I've been around for ever. And so data sharing was a new wrinkle for me to think about. And I think it's really a valuable addition to our science. It's like the open science version of things that we're now moving towards more and more, both with publications and now with the data sharing. I think that there's great value there. I think, however, and this is sort of maybe a little bit on the downside of things, it's a major challenge to pull things together in a way that they can be usefully shared. And so that was because this was kind of our historical data set. I think that issue was amplified. And I'm trying to get my team to be more proactive in creating our data sets in ways that it's easier at the end of the day to push them forward for others to access. But it's it's one of those fun challenges. Well, I'm not the one who did all the heavy lifting, but I think, in terms of thinking about how this works and how it could work maybe better, is important. But yeah, I think we all need to move in this direction.